We have a very serious subject to consider tonight: happiness. A subject I know none of you are interested in. You might be surprised to know that the so-called scientific study of happiness is very new, maybe existing for only the past 25 years or so. Because up until around 1995, academics, here we are at University of Cardiff, academics thought that you really just need to study depression and trauma and other psychological maladies. Whereas happiness, there's no need to study that because everyone knows what it is and how to be happy. They used to think like that. But for the past 25 years, the Western so-called science of happiness has boomed, and there's so many books published. How to be happy doing this, how to be happy doing that. What is happiness? What I'd like to present to you tonight is what I would recommend to you as the most authoritative source on happiness. That is the ancient Bhakti Yoga wisdom, which talks about happiness on two levels of success. But first, let's discuss happiness as ordinarily known and as you ordinarily experience it. There's some inbuilt problems which you probably noticed. And yes, those problems have to do with sustainability. Happiness comes and goes so easily. Even if you think you know what it is, and you think you've had it, it's gone. So therefore, many persons start to conclude that happiness is just an illusion, filled with sadness and confusion, but still they want to be happy. So from the Western analytical point of view, that's most agreed upon by academics, 50% of your subjective well-being, how you measure your own happiness, is due to your biological makeup, your DNA, etc. And there's not much, they say, you can do about that. You may have noticed that apparently some people are born with a sunny disposition and others are born with a gloomy disposition. So 50%, according to that Western analysis, is due to your biological makeup, your genes. And then 10% of your possibilities for happiness is tied up with circumstances, external circumstances, your job, where you live, your marriage, your gender, your ethnicity. Those things you can't change so easily. They're kind of static. So therefore, not only does your genetic makeup not give you an opportunity for adjusting the effect on happiness, but also your circumstances are kind of difficult to change. You can change them. You can end your marriage, you can change jobs, but you just can't do that overnight, you know? So then you're left with 40%. And that is supposed to be your window of opportunity. 40% depends on your positive actions and positive emotions. Now, how does the ancient Bhakti Yoga wisdom correspond to that kind of analysis? Those of you who are familiar with the prime Bhakti Yoga text, Bhagavad Gita, know that Real happiness, according to the yoga science, begins when you understand you're different from your body and mind. And as long as we identify with the body and mind as the self, we are never going to access real happiness. So you might say, well, wait a minute, Swami. I don't know about this body-mind stuff, body, mind, and spirit, but I do know that last weekend I was feeling all right. Yes, you thought you were feeling all right, but that feeling dissipated so quickly. In order to measure that kind of momentary happiness, sometimes neuroscientists will equip you with a smartphone in which they can ping you 10 times a day and ask, how do you feel right now? On a scale of 1 to 10. But there's another kind of happiness besides how you feel at the moment, because how you feel at the moment can change so quickly, right? But there's the overall life evaluation, that even though I feel miserable at this moment, 8:37 minutes after 6 o'clock, I feel miserable. When I look at my overall life, my assets, my possessions, my social respectability, I feel that, my life has been pretty good, even though right at this moment I am miserable. So you need to look at, according to the Western analysis, 2 departments of happiness in your life. The momentary happiness, which, as we said, and as you know, changes so quickly, and the overall life evaluation. But the yogic science of happiness looks first of all at, do you misidentify the body and mind as the self? This is how Krishna begins Bhagavad Gita, pointing out that as long as we think we are simply physiology and psychology, we'll never taste what is real happiness. We'll always be subject to something that seems like happiness, but you just can't get a grip on it for long. So you might say, well, look, we can't get a grip on it for long, but we get something. And if we don't try for that something, what else is there to do in life? You got to go for what you know, even though it's temporary and flickering and so momentary. What else are we supposed to do? So here you have the disagreement between the yoga and meditation texts and the Western analysis. If something has a beginning and an end, how can it truly give you happiness? In other words, has our standard of happiness sunk so low that we have no other choice but to cling desperately to shooting star happiness? Or is there something else? So the Bhakti Yoga wisdom is pointing out to you, there is something else. And that is the greatest news. Because otherwise, we would say, look, there's nothing else on tap. There's nothing else on order except temporary flickering happiness. So that's all we can go for. In other words, we're dealing with a problem of ignorance. And I know no one likes to be accused of being ignorant. We want to feel that we're expert, we're competent, we're up for the job. But to hear that we lack knowledge of what are the core principles of human development, that makes us feel like we failed. So no one wants to do that. Therefore, to analyze material happiness is very dangerous. It could lose you some friends. But you all have gathered here tonight, obviously interested in sustainable happiness, which is a bird of a different feather than the flickering, temporary, momentary happiness. So let's talk for a few minutes about the problems of so-called happiness or momentary happiness. You all know how it comes and goes. We can talk about it in a more clinical way, that problem. There's something called hedonic adaptation. Hedonic from hedonistic. Adaptation means simply you get used to it. Something that was so fresh and exhilarating, after a while becomes so stale. You've experienced that in various entertainments, various diversions, relationships, new hobbies, going to new places. After a while, the thrill is gone. You get used to it. How are you going to get around that? The best thing that Western happiness scientists can recommend you is variety. They say, look, you may do a positive activity, something that you really think is going to make you happy, but the buzz is going to wear off, just like a carbonated beverage goes flat. So what do you need to do? You need to juggle various activities. So in this way, your life becomes a juggling act. How many balls can you juggle without they're all crashing to the ground? You've got to have multiple sources of stimulation. You can't just rely on one person or one place or one this or one that. You've got to have this and that and the other and the other and the other. And you keep juggling them, switching back and forth. Because each one thing that you do is going to lose its attractiveness. And this is what you see all the time. People can't be satisfied with one thing, whether it's one relationship, one of this, one of that. They have to get variety. They say variety is the spice of life. You don't want to be locked into one thing because you know the thrill will fade. So the best that materialistic happiness can offer you is a life of juggling. How do the yoga texts analyze that Western outlook, which is actually nothing new? The graduate study to Bhagavad Gita is Srimad Bhagavatam, an encyclopedic expansion of the themes in Bhagavad Gita. And there, the Bhakti Yoga wisdom teaches us that, well, it uses the example of chewing. I don't know whether you were taught in school about chewing your food, but when I was a primary school student, in health class, they taught us that you should chew every mouthful 33 times. Anyone here taught that? No. Oh, yes. Of course, I always wondered, even as a little kid, how many people chew each mouthful 32 times? You usually just and slurp it down. So maybe once, twice, thrice, that's about it. But in relationship to material happiness, the yoga texts use the example of someone chewing something so thoroughly, 33 times, and then they pass it to you to chew. You would say, oh, that's gross. There's no flavor there. It's all gone. So that is how the yoga texts describe the version of happiness that has been passed down to us generation after generation. We're chewing that which has already been chewed. But you say, what other option is there? You've got to go for what you know, and if you don't know anything better, anything more, then so be it. So this juggling act is what our life is resigned to. Of course, certainly we want to be successful, but to understand real success, you have to see that you have an outer box of success and an inner box. The outer box is all the stuff that the media would write up about you if you were famous. Your external life, where you live, the car you drive, the academic degrees and certificates you have, who you're with and who you're not with. That's the external part of your life. Many people, as you know, make the mistake of thinking that external box of so-called success is where it's at. But I think most of you know that there should be something else. That's why you're here tonight. So there's the inner box of success, which involves solving the happiness mystery. So remember, we stated about how 50% is your genetic makeup, 10% circumstances, and that gives you a 40% window of opportunity so that you, through positive activities and positive emotions, can change your happiness. The yoga wisdom says you have 100% opportunity, 100% window, not simply 40%, but you've got 100% window because you're not your biology, you're not your situations, and you're not your psychology. Once you understand that, you have 100% chance for affecting major changes in your happiness, because those changes are not based on the body and mind. As you know, the body is always changing, the mind is always changing. So, as Krishna points out in Bhagavad Gita, what is it about you that doesn't change, although the body and mind are always changing? So now we're dealing with the first level of yogic perfection. We're talking about genuine yoga knowledge, not simply the physical exercises, which are great for your health. I do it myself. We're not simply talking about the breathing exercises, which are also great for your health. Yoga literally means connection, to link. So the greatest yogic mystery is to link with what? In other words, we are incomplete without the ultimate connection. But people are afraid of that kind of knowledge. People want to have a false sense of independence and like they're on their own. But without this kind of advanced yogic knowledge, they can't function properly, so-called on their own. You would be horrified if you saw a 4-year-old child walking out in the middle of a busy intersection. You try to stop the child. The child might tell you, I'm fine, I know what I'm doing, but you don't believe it. So our existence in this temporary body and temporary world is irresponsible when it's like that of a 4-year-old child walking out into a busy 4-lane intersection. We need more knowledge. So real knowledge begins with understanding how We are a non-material entity beyond the body and mind. Because as long as we think we're material, we're going to have a material concept of happiness. And I just explained some brief limitations to the material conception of happiness. The flavor goes so quickly. In fact, that the flavor dissipates so quickly makes you wonder, maybe it's all an illusion. We want to be happy, and we want others to make us happy. You know how it is. It's like throughout the day you have a happy-o-meter in your pocket, and you're constantly recording how you feel to yourself. Am I happy right now at this moment? Do you feel that pressure to be happy right now at this moment? You look at what you're doing with your own personal happy-o-meter. What about my job? Am I doing what I love? Is my work fulfilling? What about my partner? Is my partner making me happy right now? All day long it goes on. All day, all night. Am I happy? Am I really happy? I mean, really, am I really happy? Am I with the right person? How do I feel about that at this moment? So the whole world will approve of you. Yes, this is how you should spend your life. You owe it to yourself to be happy, and those around you have as their purpose to make you happy. If they make you happy, then you can try to make them happy, and that's life. According to the Bhakti Yoga wisdom, this is a tragic life, because the conception of happiness is wrongly founded. It's on the wrong foundation. It's simply based on the changing body and mind. Whereas the genuine yogis know that real happiness begins with our understanding how we are a non-material entity wearing the body and mind like clothes. Krishna uses that very example in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. So if we're really going to get our life on track, we at least have to come to level 1 of genuine happiness. And that's to understand that because we're not material, material things and affairs won't make us happy. They just give you the illusion of happiness. It's like grabbing onto the shadow of someone's body instead of grabbing onto the body. You would never do that. Oh, there's your shadow on the wall. Everyone would think you're nuts. Come on, you got to go for the real person there. Get your arms wrapped around the real thing. But is it the real thing? According to the ancient yoga wisdom, you've missed the point. Now, I don't recommend that the next time someone locks you in an embrace and tells you, I love you, I don't recommend that you ask them, well, who am I anyway? But it would be a good idea. However you tactfully pull that off, I don't know. I have no recommendations. But that would be a realistic relationship question. Oh, you're so dear to me. Wonderful, but who am I anyway? Am I this body? Am I this mind? So the yogis and meditators want to get to the bottom of this. I'm talking about the genuine yogis and meditators. They want to get to the bottom of the bodily illusion, the mental illusion, and get beyond it. But that's just the beginning. That's level 1. Level 2 is, all right, you're not the body, you're not the mind. You understand that you're a spiritual entity, non-material entity. But what is your mission in life? What are you supposed to be doing with yourself as a non-material particle of spiritual consciousness? What are you supposed to be striving for? And therefore, The knowledge that Krishna gives is so important. It's about the love supreme. As non-material particles, spirit souls, our real nature is to be connected to the Supreme Soul, the ultimate source, the unlimitedly attractive, infinitely attractive ultimate source. In other words, instead of our having a relationship with matter, a relationship with mere physiology and psychology, we're meant to have relationships on the spiritual platform. But doing that is unknown in our consumer societies. Therefore, people are always trying to connect with material objects, material sensations, and material experiences. But they're not material. So what we're getting at here is an inbuilt incompatibility. Sometimes I know many of you wonder, what's it all about? Why am I missing the point? I just can't connect with what satisfies me. Because as we already described, you're fighting against hedonic or hedonistic adaptation. The thrill fades. You get used to it. No matter how hard you try, you can't keep that freshness. Life is a battle against hedonistic adaptation. Social psychologists can even plot the whole phenomenon on a graph. You enter into something new. You start something new. So you're high up on the graph at first. And then you go along for a while. Yeah, this is great. Oh, this is wonderful. I mean, it's so nice. And then you start to plummet. So what is your only recourse materially? What's your only alternative? How can I prolong being at the top of the graph? Because the plummet is inevitable. So I've got to work hard to extend that top level before the fall comes. That's it. That's what life is all about. What the Bhakti Yoga wisdom recommends is just get off that whole scene altogether. You're not material, and material fulfillment won't make you happy. But we're very determined. So what do? In our illusion, we're trapped in a matrix of illusion. What do? We juggle. Okay, this person lost their buzz, but I'll juggle and there'll be another person, another situation, some other experience. And you feverishly are juggling all these balls, and you know what happens. There's mental breakdown, there's all kinds of conflicts as you struggle to juggle so many variegated affairs. It's exhausting. How do we actually get inner peace? We have to know what's inside. So in this way, once we see the full picture of the ancient yoga wisdom, you can call it the Krishna science. Once we see that for what it's worth, everything starts to clear up. I'm disconnected. First of all, I don't know that I'm a spiritual entity. I think I'm the body and mind, physiology and psychology. And secondly, I don't know what I should be connecting to. So without knowledge of what we should be connecting to as the ultimate attractiveness, the love supreme, we put all the emphasis on tiny living entities like ourselves. And you know what that's like. Oh, you put such a burden on another person or other persons. You are going to fulfill me. You are going to be my everything. You know what happens. It's great for a while, isn't it? It's great for a while because in your mind, you're imagining this is going to last. Or even if you can be very pragmatic. Even though it's not going to last, so what? You got to go for what you know, right for the moment. Get it while you can. So either way, you're doomed to failure, doomed to frustration. By treating someone else as if they are the ultimate source, as if they are the cause of all causes, the source of all energies. So the ancient yoga wisdom says, hey, you need to make the ultimate connection, and then you'll know how to deal with everything that emanates from that ultimate source. The yoga texts call that ultimate source Krishna, which literally means the infinitely attractive ultimate source of pleasure. So who wouldn't want to connect with the unlimited source of pleasure, but we don't know about it? So at the top rung of the yoga ladder, there's this emphasis on the full meaning of yoga, to connect, the love supreme. Rather than wasting our life trying to connect with matter, physiology and psychology, and squeeze out something that seems to be pleasurable for a moment. You know, it's like taking a dry towel, wringing a dry towel to get a few drops of water. It's frustrating, isn't it? And when we get so exasperated, when we get so frustrated, what's the next step? You gotta look for someone to blame. What's wrong with you? You're just not the way you used to be. You've changed. Or else you say the other way, which is just a different road to the same goal. Look, you're great. It's me, I know. It's my problem. I've got the problem. There's things I need to work out. I mean, you're fine. I mean, really. So you either tell the person, get lost, or you do it the so-called humble way. I've got some things I've got to change in myself. Really, you deserve someone better. In this way, life goes on without knowledge of what is that ultimate source of pleasure. So many people are astonished to know that the ultimate goal of yoga and meditation is pleasure, but it's a different kind of pleasure. So you might say, well, why isn't everyone flocking to hear this? There's such a thing as the energy of illusion, in which we're so distracted and so attached to pursuing momentary so-called happiness. That pursuit has been downloaded into us since birth. If you want to be happy, do like this. If you want to be satisfied, do like that. Successful people act in this way and not in that way. All that has been downloaded into you since you were an infant. So we need to change the knowledge that we're hearing. And in that way, our lifestyle can start to change. So sustainable happiness means off the material platform, off the gridlock of material endeavor. Sustainable happiness means happiness that doesn't exploit other persons, doesn't exploit other creatures, doesn't exploit the environment, and doesn't exploit future generations. That's a lot to think about, isn't it? How are we going to pull that off? Don't exploit other persons, don't exploit other creatures, don't exploit the environment, don't exploit future generations. Well, how do you do that? It can't be done on the material plane. We need that ultimate science of yogic connection to the ultimate source, to Krishna. And then we can be in harmony with other persons, other creatures, the environment, future generations. Real happiness requires knowledge, but the knowledge is blissful because it's about the ultimate bliss. So let me implore you, think about going to a higher level. As Albert Einstein is reputed to have said, a problem is never solved on the same level that it originated. You have to work at the problem from a higher level. So this is the great contribution of Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness, the yoga of the ultimate connection, the love supreme. This is the top rung on the yoga ladder. First, though, we have to begin with primary school, the ABCs of yoga and meditation. I'm different from the body and mind. Then we can make further progress. Because as long as we identify with our physiology and psychology, our body and mind will simply be trapped in a materialistic conception of happiness. I'm this body, I'm this mind. To be happy, I should make my body and mind gratified. I should indulge in my body and mind. Then I'll be happy. That's what we've been doing. And the yoga wisdom points out, we've been doing that birth after birth, lifetime after lifetime. That's another subject. We won't get into it tonight. So we've got a lot to think about and a lot to do. So I wanted just to give you a basic overview of real success. Real success begins with level 1, understanding I'm different from the material, and level 2, that ultimate connection. I'm searching for connection. I'm like an orphan who has wealthy parents, but I don't know where they are, where they live, so I'm out on the street, homeless. So the ultimate goal of the top rung on the yoga ladder is the love supreme, the all-spiritual relationship between the tiny part that we are and the complete whole. So yes, we have a lot of work to do with this short human life. But the human life is so valuable because it gives you the advanced consciousness so that we can have a discussion like we're having now. You don't see chickens or rabbits or sheep having gatherings to figure out who they are. But humans can do that. So if the human being wastes his or her human life on pursuing the same things that the animals automatically get, this is a great tragedy. So, I hope I've given you a few things to think about. These are things I think about all the time. So I just wanted to try and offer you some benefit in terms of urging you. Yes, think about these things while you're pushing on your life. And I know you have your necessities. I have my necessities. They have to be met. But let's remember, or let's revive our remembrance of what is the ultimate pursuit of life, the ultimate goal of life. Thank you very much. Maybe there are some questions. I'll try to answer. There is the inferior and there is the superior. I'm pointing out what is superior. Now you have to choose. Do you want to be tied up with the inferior or go for the superior? Now in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna makes a very interesting point. Krishna points out that the aspiring yogi may try to restrict himself, herself, from external material pleasure, but he or she will fail unless the person, the aspiring yogi, has a taste of what is superior. So it's not a question of just turning your back on temporary pleasure. It's a question of having something better. Otherwise, your hiatus, your vacation from temporary external pleasure won't last long. You've got to do something for enjoying. Now, if you are, just posit this, hypothesize this, if you are non-material, then it is of your essence to connect with the Supreme Source rather than you're connecting with matter. Because you are of the same quality as the Supreme Source, not the same quantity. You're a particle. So when the particle has the same quality as the ultimate source and connects, that's not external. Think about it. It takes a while to process, I know. But what I really would like you to focus on is the reality that you're never going to give up material indulgences unless you have something superior. So it's all about prioritization. Suppose I tell you, look, my man, you want to be happy? You should try jumping up and down and to see if your head can touch that silver ball there. You would say, everyone looks up at the silver ball and says, how can anyone be happy jumping up and down trying to touch their head to that? So similarly, the yoga wisdom is saying, there is material pleasure out there, but why would anyone try for it if that person has higher knowledge? You've got better things to do. So it's not about denying yourself, it's about prioritizing the superior pleasure. And when you get so absorbed in the superior pleasure, you don't have time for the inferior. Think about that, please. It's not about abnegation or stoicism or denying yourself or going to sleep on a bed of nails or something. It's about what is the best use of your temporary stay in this body. What's the ultimate connectivity? When there is ultimate connectivity, then you know how to handle all the immediate connectivities. You know how to deal with other persons instead of exploiting them. Just like in relationships, which everyone is interested in. How do you have a successful, lasting relationship? Is it possible these days? You know, the Bhakti Yoga wisdom recommends partners in enlightenment rather than partners in temporary indulgence. So everything, all the aspects of your life can be used for that ultimate connectivity, the love supreme. This is called Krishna consciousness or Bhakti Yoga. People are lonely because the traditional structures of human relationships have broken down, and it's not possible for there to be sustainable relationships just based on the body and mind. There was an attempt maybe 100 years ago, 50 years ago. You should do this, you should do that. Here are your social obligations. You were kind of locked into a role determined much by what your parents did and what your parents wanted you to do. But that's all out the window now. So people are lonely because of material reasons, but most of all they're lonely because they lack that ultimate connection that the genuine yoga system gives. So I tried to answer your point in terms of the material as well as the spiritual. What you are asking about is actually the pinnacle of mystic yoga. You get a hint of that in Jesus, a statement attributed to Jesus, and bhakti yogis consider Jesus as a topmost bhakti yogi, master of ultimate connectivity. Attributed to him is a statement, you need to be in the world but not of the world. That is actually very high mystic yoga. It's like saying you need to be submerged in the ocean but don't get wet. How do you do that? We need to learn the art, science, and culture of using the energy of the Supreme for the pleasure of the Supreme. Whether it's your home, your relationships, your children, how to use all that for the ultimate goal of life. This requires wisdom and what I call lifestyle engineering. The mind is matter. The yoga text will explain that too. It's not a question of mind over matter. The mind is also matter, but it's considered subtle matter, finer matter. So, just like people can have a broken arm, they can also have an impaired mental body, so to speak. So holistic healing recognizes, you can find many therapists who will treat you in terms of your mind being a machine. Just like a physiological doctor treats your body as a machine, similarly, your mind can also be treated in that way. But you are not your body or mind. Nevertheless, for example, if I break my arm, I'm going to go to a doctor to get my arm mended. I'm not going to say, well, I'm not the body, which is true, but the body is my equipment for achieving higher purposes. So I got to keep my equipment in shape, and the mind is also equipment. You've got to keep your mind in shape. So understanding the ultimate goal of life is not an excuse for neglecting your physical or mental health. In fact, you take care of those machines even better because you're using them for the greatest purpose. Very good question, thank you. When has pleasure ever been hard work? So if indeed I'm talking about higher pleasure, then it's not work, it's the natural thing to function in that way. Even the work, the so-called work put into convincing persons that they're not healthy, that they need to make some corrections, even though that's taking a lot of energy, it still is pleasure to introduce reality to those who have lost their grip on it in the name of material success and material happiness. We may have all started in that way. I may have started in that way in a previous lifetime. And maybe in this lifetime, starting at the age of 22, I got it together, hopefully. You got to start somewhere. Journey begins with a single step. Maybe, for example, you'll come to this program, listen, yes, what the Swami said made a lot of sense, and that's it for the rest of your life. You may never encounter or participate in any such gathering for the rest of your life. But according to the yoga wisdom, you've been tagged. You'll carry whatever little spiritual inclination you developed, you'll carry that into your next life, whereas all your material gains will be lost when you give up that body and give up that mind. So in other words, understanding the Bhakti Yoga wisdom lets you know you're playing for keeps. Maybe in this lifetime you're not completely successful, but you'll carry the credits into your next lifetime. So, as Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, on this path there's no loss, there's no diminution. But materially, you lose everything. So that shows you why some persons can be flickering, just like happiness is flickering, material happiness. They take up the path of reality and then, let's get back to some illusion. And then, actually, the illusion is so disappointing. Let me try for the spiritual reality. But appreciate those faltering first steps, like of a little baby learning to walk. Keep trying him. One day you will walk. Okay? So yes, materialistic sound binds you in illusion, and spiritual sound frees you from illusion and reestablishes your ultimate connectivity with Krishna, the love supreme. So anyone in any circumstance can participate in this mantra meditation. So I'll ask you, just join with me for a few minutes. It's call and response. And in this way, if you invest your heart and your head into this mantra meditation, you could experience some profound changes according to your personal investment. Everyone's an individual, so I don't expect everyone's going to have a wow experience, because people are at different, even in this room, people are individuals at different places in their cosmic journey, so to speak. So everyone's going to be affected differently, but I know that everyone will be benefited, whether they know it or not. So I'm going to sing a simple tune, because the main point is not the musicology, the main point is the sincerity of the heart. So as I said, I'll sing and then you can sing, and we'll see where it takes us. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. A little faster now. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much.